Ah, right. Here we are, Squatch Talk live.
Hey, that was really nice. Was that opening sound effect?
Oh, you don't even want to. You don't want to even hear the intro song I have picked out.
You're right. I don't.
Yeah, you don't.
Well, listen. Let's just get started here.
Well, all right.
Welcome to the primate objectives. With this is Squatch Talk with Pat and Ernie.
Ernie and Pat.
Introduce yourself, Pat.
Hey, what's up? I'm Pat, and here with Ernie, and we're gonna talk. We're gonna talk Squatch tonight.
That's right. Fascinating topic. Compelling phenomenon, and you wonder why there are, adult, credible, otherwise sane-seeming people that are just dedicated to this, dedicated to researching the phenomenon and trying to bring proof forth to science.
Some. So,
okay.
Ernie, I just want to make this clear. Ernie is, he's kind of an encyclopedia, I would say, of Squatchy stuff, Squatch knowledge, and scientific knowledge as well. So
I didn't get into this until 2005, and I will say that I started reading things in print that were written by Bigfoot researchers and scientists, both skeptical and advocate scientists, that were in print long before the internet came around. And so I do have a pretty widely encompassing view of this phenomenon as it's been documented for a lot longer than just what you can find on the internet. But of course, the internet's a great resource. But yeah, I'm pretty well versed in the whole of it and all the various facets of it and the correlations between the Bigfoot phenomenon and what we see in the natural world. So yeah, it's been a bit of an obsession, I have to say.
Right. Yeah, I know. I am. It's funny. I texted you the other day. I said, "Hey man, have you ever heard of the Miller document?" And you kind of jumped all over me about it because you're like, I've told you about it 20 times, dude, and it's pretty much been debunked. So
well, yeah. Well, yeah, not necessarily debunked, but it's still a very compelling document. I mean, I'd love to talk about that maybe in a future episode, focus on it, because kind of like the Todd Standing thing we were just discussing earlier, it's, if it's bunk, it's not bunk because of the lady who delivered it on her little podcast. She didn't write it.
Right.
She certainly could not have written the Miller document, but yeah, very compelling document and all the taxonomy of deer and things like that are mentioned in it. It's pretty interesting. But back to just Sasquatch in general, yeah, I got fascinated with this in 2005, and I know you were come to find out also interested in this. We didn't know. We were good friends, but I didn't know we had this in common.
Correct.
The common interest for, God, I don't know, maybe close to 10 years. But yeah, I was just fascinated that there were so many credible people that this whole legend of Bigfoot persisted. I had no idea until 2005. Up until then, I mean, once in a while you heard the word Bigfoot as a kid, maybe as a joke, as a legend or a cheesy movie, but that was it.
Yeah.
But in 2005, I just suddenly became aware, of all, of actual scientists, forest rangers, wildlife biologists, field biologists, various wildlife agency officials and people like that who aren't just credible, they're credentialed people with authoritative knowledge of wildlife and wilderness in their area. And even there's this growing list among the larger list of credible eyewitnesses, meaning hunters and loggers and lots of outdoorsmen But the most compelling part of it to me was that there were actual people that were this, and that's not counting all the law enforcement. You know, that I don't think you even need to count law enforcement in order to make your case when we're talking about what is apparently some sort of wild species, compared to humans, of course, wild. And so to me, the most credible eyewitnesses that people should really focus on are the ones that are of forest rangers, park rangers, wildlife officials, and things like that. It's, you know, why would those people, why would they be misidentifying bears? And how could they be fooled by someone in a costume?
Sure.
You know, so that's there's certainly a very compelling phenomenon with credible people seeing 8 to 9 foot tall, you know, giant, hairy, ape-like creatures in the most remote forested regions of North America, and of course in other spots in the world with similar terrain and high rainfall, incidentally.
Right. And I don't want to take anything away from the normal everyday people that see him too, which is
not at all
far outnumbers. You know,
here's the thing: I got into this skeptically, and I'm still skeptical when I hear or read of, just as you are, when we hear any claim. The first thing I'm trying to think of are any other reasonable explanations, like other wildlife or hoaxing, etc. But as I looked into it, like a lot of people do, they're complete skeptics, non-believers as I was. But something about this strikes their interest, hits their ear funny, and they're like, well, wait a minute, I didn't know that there was actual hair samples of unknown primate discovered in, you know, confirmed in North America in different places. I didn't know that there were dermal ridges in the tracks and, you know, all that kind of stuff. Wait a second. And so then smart skeptical people will keep an open mind as they research, and research means studying. It means doing some damn reading with relatable topics, like the great apes or the fossil record or habitat rainfall diet. So, it's pretty fascinating. The reason I say that anyone getting into this who is skeptical, I invite you to please go down the rabbit hole, because it's by focusing on the most credible aspects of this phenomenon, like these credentialed officials, you know, that are among the credible eyewitnesses every year. It suddenly lends more credibility to the common man. It lends more consideration to, well, wait a second. Well, maybe all of those people that we've heard about all these years that we just wrote off as whatever, crazy country folks or this or that or the other, gosh, they're describing the same thing. You know, so I think that starting with just the cream of the crop, so to speak, the absolute best evidence, and with eyewitnesses, it would be this category I keep talking about. People with authoritative knowledge, qualified knowledge of wildlife and wilderness, and that suddenly, I think, opens a person's mind and thinks, well, gosh, I guess all these other people, you know, I've got to lend the same consideration to them because they describe the same creature as the professionals do, which incidentally is the same creature described by Native Americans for thousands of years.
Correct.
And not the Native Americans, not Leif Erikson, not Daniel Boone, and not Bauman, who related his story to Theodore Roosevelt around a campfire. None of these people up to the present day have ever described Sasquatches with purple wings.
Correct.
You know, or a horse's head or anything like that. They all describe the same thing.
Yeah.
And so, it then you really think, well, gosh, let me look into what do we know about apes? What do we know about the apes that are living? And you study that stuff. And then you say, well, what do we know about other hominids or hominoid species that did exist that are in the fossil record? In other words, ape men, various species of ape men that lived alongside Homo sapiens sapiens, modern humans, us.
Right.
And once you look into all these other things, like known ape behavior, the long, deep calls, long distance calls, the smacking of limbs against trees, the throwing of rocks and limbs, once you start looking into every relatable facet, you will realize that these things don't just correlate sort of, and they don't correlate if you added this little variable here, then maybe blah, blah. No, they correlate perfectly. Known ape behavior, known ape habitat, what we can infer and extrapolate from the other apes and hominids in the fossil record, and all of these different details that are described in Bigfoot sightings and encounters. They don't just correlate sort of, they correlate perfectly.
Right. With what you're talking about is known science from the fossil record and from ape primate behaviors.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. All absolutely known. And there's also, precedent in recent history of large species of primates being discovered, both living and fossil, just in the last 10 years. And people don't seem to think about that or talk about that a whole lot.
True.
It's really fascinating,
Yeah.
Large-bodied, both ape and monkey, and another species of human, the Denisovans or Denisovans, and it's over in Russia. But it's a recent discovery. You've got the Hobbit, Homo floresiensis over there in Southeast Asia, and those fossils that of course prove the local legend of that species.
Yeah.
You got the Billy ape that, just in the earlier mid-2000s, the Billy, Billy ape from the Congo in Africa. It's the second largest non-human primate on Earth, and we've only just discovered it, proven it to exist. And the locals in that area described it as the lion killers. They had talked about them forever, just like the people in the area of the mountain gorillas talked about them forever. But Western science didn't know it until Western science had absolute proof, and we didn't have absolute proof of the Billy ape until around 2007. And it is a 6 to 6.5 foot tall, 200 plus pound chimpanzee.
What?
Which is, yes, and it's they're not bipedal. But when they stand erect, that's how tall and big they are, and they are They are a perfect mix of physical and behavioral traits between chimpanzees and gorillas, and they are the second largest non-human ape species known to exist on Earth, and they've only been documented for the last 7 years or so.
Yeah, you would think science. You'd think science would have learned its lesson from a glaring example like the Billy ape and the coelacanth, and there's others,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That you can embrace the idea of a species without a body.
Right, absolutely. And back to these fossil apes and fossil hominids, the other ape men that scientists theorize, and with reasonable accuracy, I think we can all pretty much agree that it appears that we, the smartest apes, not just the smartest apes by far of all the rest, even with our cousins like Homo neanderthals, Neanderthals, and these Denisovans and other things like that. Apparently we've outcompeted, killed off, ran off, every other hominid species that kind of looks like us, especially the hairy ones,
Sure.
They're eating up all our berries and, in our creeks trying to get our fish. And we had spears, we're groups, we're pack hunters, we've got language, we've got strategy. Naturally, eventually we weren't going to have any of that. So, and we know from, and people, they need to realize also, skeptics or not, that the fossil record, a lot of time people interpret as a misnomer. They think that means it's some complete record or that science
Right. Yeah.
presumes to know a complete record of anything. for sure. We know we have found what we have found. The fossil record is simply the bones, the fossils that we have found so far. And people need to know that because all ape species are in wet environments, wet forested environments, that that environments like that do not preserve bones. Bones don't fossilize; they decay.
Yep.
Period.
Mm-hmm.
So
yep.
we have very, very, very few fossils of any apes, even the known apes, chimps and gorillas. We have very few bones of them, and very few bones. We have hardly any complete skeletons of of anything. Than these other hominid species, they did exist. In other words,
sure.
Bigfoot creatures are in the fossil record. They stood upright. They were covered in hair. Some were bigger. Some were about our size. Some were smaller than us. And they had feet like yours and mine. They walked upright. And the theory is that we, the smartest of all, outcompeted all of these others, all of them. And then, of course, with Neanderthals, we kind of interbred. We've come to learn. But I'll wrap this up really quick. I was just saying that to theorize, if, as a skeptic, if such a creature did exist and there is precedent for it, we know that they had to evolve over thousands of years to avoid us. So, you gotta think about all that in those terms, in this real big picture view. If you're trying to understand how this could possibly be, how could something be so reclusive? So that was the point I was trying to make.
Well, I agree, because let's just say the world came together tomorrow and humanity came together and said, we don't want this species on the planet anymore. What do you think would happen? They would be extinct in a week.
Of course. Of course.
It
could be done. You're right. It could be done. Apparently,
6 billion versus what? However many.
Yeah. I was listening to Jeff Meldrum, Dr. Jeff Meldrum, talking about, just giving a basic estimate, trying to explain to someone in an interview how this, what is theorized by the Sasquatch advocates, and I'm not quoting him here, this is just me, is a species of rarely occurring, meaning there just simply aren't many of them and there don't have to be that many of them. A very rarely occurring species of bipedal ape that is highly intelligent, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the same combination of things that make us intelligent.
Right.
It's not the same kind of thing that would have to have evolved to avoid humans. And so, this is a theory, is that it could exist. There could be such a flesh and blood species. And that, yes, if there were that few of them, and they would be, the known gorillas can live, I think, to be around 60 years old, and or maybe 65.
Sure.
And so such a large-bodied ape in age apparently is longer-lived. Lifespans are more consistent with larger-bodied animals. So anyway, it stands to reason, extrapolating from what we know about gorillas and, of course, humans, that they would be long-lived. So say, and this is Dr. Meldon's just sort of little guess or demonstration here to give an idea, say per one square 1,000 miles of suitable habitat, where you've got remote forest. Let's say there's one big dominant male, maybe 2 to 3 females, a few kids in tow. Again, this is quoting Dr. Meldrum here. And, that would probably be enough. You think about if they live to be 60, 70 years old, and they don't have to be that many of them. Gorillas don't have big litters. They don't have, they don't birth 3 or 4 young at a time. And from what I remember studying about gorillas, I think that they only have 2 to 3 max per lifetime offspring. And so imagine, if Sasquatch only had 1 to 2 offspring or something thereabouts, you're just not going to they don't need that many of them to stay viable.
True,
and,
but they would have to run into others as far as what we know about how the gene pool works for primates.
Correct. However, it's funny you mentioned that. In this particular interview, Meldrum also, I was very interested to know about this. He was saying that, depending on the species, like gorillas, gorillas were reduced and bottlenecked down to below estimates vary, but I think he said below 200, below 250, I think is what I've always heard, or below 350. But that's very small for a species like gorillas. But apparently, while it takes a very long time for them to recover, they are resilient to that kind of thing, to inbreeding, and they seem to be just fine. And apparently, chimps, and he cited other primates as examples. So, yes, but as we all kind of theorize,
right?
It doesn't seem like Sasquatches or a Sasquatch group would sit foot. It doesn't seem that they ever sit foot anywhere.
Yeah, I know.
It seems like they can roam. They may have a range, but it seems like they probably stay on the move a good bit. And so, yes, absolutely, they would come in contact. And there's every reason to think that at different times, at different places, for different reasons that we don't know, because we don't know so much. We don't know so much about this phenomenon. But obviously they could be loners or they could be in groups. There's evidence to suggest both.
Yeah, I agree. Going back to eyewitness encounters.
Let's do it.
I was kind of thinking about this today. Maybe you could help me, but I was trying to wrap my head around just how many people have had eyewitness encounters, let's just say in the past 50 years. And I'm thinking it has to be minimum tens of thousands. And more realistically, we're pushing more like 6 digits, into the hundreds of thousands.
Well, of all the credible people that all the reports I've read where people have taken out sworn affidavits, they've gone and, their name is on it. They're, like I say, you've got law enforcement that's on the job, military people that are on the job when they make their claim, make their sighting, or their report, people that stand to, they risk to lose a good bit by making what we would think is a pretty outrageous claim. And so, back to the credible eyewitnesses.
I'm not even saying credible. I'm just saying theorize.
No, that's what I'm saying is for all the credible eyewitnesses that are telling you, like, okay, we're pretty sure we believe that guy. Well, you just have to imagine you've got all these other people that are also making reports, and many of them seem very reluctant. In a lot of ways, and they might make a report. Yeah, they'll send their report into the BFRO or whatever, but they don't want their name on it, and or depending on their job or whatever, because there's still obviously a great stigma attached to saying that you've seen a monster in the woods. So
sure.
So it makes you wonder how many more people who don't have sightings, who don't make a report, who don't make contact anyone about it.
Yeah.
So, you're right. It's astounding to think, because it's such a reluctant thing to come forward about. You have to wonder.
And
so many people.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying. I just in my head, when I really thought about it, I kind of formulated the hundreds of thousands kind of.
Yeah. Well, I thought
range.
You said I can go with tens of thousands, and I'm not. Hey, who knows, man? Who knows? So I'm not, I'm open-minded to everything, and that certainly we don't know. But you're right. There's no telling, man. There's no, so many people that come forward say that they're just now coming forward. They had a sighting, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, and didn't want to talk about it to anyone. But now, because there's much more attention to this topic,
and there's forums for it. To bring up like Chronicles is a pretty
Exactly.
a pretty good one, you know, to where somebody's out there saying, hey, you know, if you got a story, you come on air and tell me about it, you know. And Wes, I think Wes will tell you that, you know, for every story that goes on air, there were 10 that didn't, you know, for what, maybe for whatever reason, but there are people who don't want to go on air.
And that is a very compelling phenomenon that has been chronicled by researchers like John Green, Renee DeHenden, all of these early researchers, the scientists like John Bindernagel, Mayan Shinsky, you know, all these guys that are into it, that have had encounters or something happen, that are in the hunt for this themselves. And all of the books that I read, like I said, before the internet, way back in the 50s and stuff, when researchers were first getting into this, very common that for every 2 or 3 people that they got to talk to, or that, you know, people that actually went to the paper and then they got to interview them, people who came forward, they were also personally interviewed lots of other people that did not want their names used and were not going to come forward, but they would talk to this Bigfoot guy. They'd tell them what they had seen, but no, they were not going to get involved or put their name on any piece of paper anywhere. So, yeah, you got to wonder, man. You got to wonder how widespread this phenomenon is. Hey, the Bigfoot Museum, and the Bigfoot Museum that Dave Bacara and his wife Belinda have up there in, you know, near Blue Ridge. It's Cherry Log, Georgia, which you and I've been to. They say that people come in from this area, well, from their area, this general area, all the time, and tell them stories. And these folks have never contacted law enforcement or a wildlife agency or a Bigfoot forum or database or newspaper, but they will confide in them because, after all, they've walked into the one place.
The one, yeah.
They're walking their whole lives where apparently, they can. There's not a whole lot of people around, or microphones in front of them, and they can talk to someone who obviously is going to listen to what they have to say. And that's fascinating, man. Think about how many other folks don't talk about it. You know, man, all of my friends know, like your friends probably know, that I'm Bigfoot crazy. You know, I'm fascinated by this phenomenon. So if I reported a Bigfoot sighting, you know, no one would believe me. They'd think I was nuts. You know, they would just, well, there's Ernie. He wanted to see one, so he saw one. I would be hesitant to come. That'd be the first thing that came to my mind, besides after talking to you, of course. And I'd still have to convince you that, you know, because we're both so into this. If something were to happen and I was trying to get you on the phone, I mean, that's how much of a stigma still applies even to guys.
True.
Most folks like us, that most folks would call believers, even though I am not a Bigfoot believer, or just for the record.
Right.
I'm very interested in this. I'm a true researcher. I've read a lot, studied a lot, and I'm an outdoorsman. Not that I have any necessarily had any encounters myself, but that's why I became so fascinated. You know, discovering that this legend persists. You know, this phenomenon of reports persists.
Yeah.
I had no idea that was still going on. Yeah.
It's fascinating to me that it seems like really only in the past few years there's become this like real, true, safe forum for people to go to. You know, you're gonna get your share of crazies, you're gonna get your share of actors or whatever who are, you know, trying to, test their abilities as actors. You're gonna get your share of that, but there is this place, and I don't know, dude. I hear it in people's voices. I can tell they're sincere.
You know, and there are a lot of podcasts like this that have been going on even before Chronicles. I think the guy's name was Chuck Prawl, who unfortunately passed away a few years ago, but he had a really cool website, and there was there's Ed Brown, there's these people, the crypto crew, and so, you know, the guy that interviewed the fella from Virginia that claimed to have, you know, shot the one on Thanksgiving Day, I believe it was.
Oh, that's such a great encounter. Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm saying other podcasts like that have kind of that this slow sort of groundswell and slowly getting traction, and more of them kind of popping up. And like you say, I listened to pretty much all of them, and as long as it sounds like everybody's credible. But yeah, there's a lot of them, and now it's just nice to know that people might be more inclined to come forward and tell their story, because there's so much more of a forum for it now.
Yeah, and I think so, because Ernie, a part of that is it getting a sort of a bigger platform. So if people are listening to Chronicles, like Chronicles kind of blew up and turned into like its own thing and got big, and so that meant it had a bigger reach. For people to go, oh my God, this is a safe place for me. I can email this guy and talk to him over the phone and feel comfortable and blah, blah, blah,
Yeah. Well, I like that there are shows like that where you hear eyewitnesses. And again, some may sound more compelling than others, because they are more compelling than others. But I would like to think that people who are not already believers, so to speak, might stumble across a lot of these different Bigfoot-related podcasts where eyewitnesses, Will Jennings, talking to people with his asking, alleged eyewitnesses and giving their encounters. And I'd like to think that, eventually the broader public would kind of turn their ear to this, and start to consider this stuff a little more and think, well, wait a minute,
Yeah, I don't see it.
All these people be making this crap up. In other words, it just spreads the word a little more, and I think you're right. It gives people an idea of, okay, there is a community out there now, that can talk about this stuff.
Yeah,
and so
but it's like you said, some people, you go to if you ever try to talk to them about it, they just think you're nuts. They always want it. The thing I always get is the Loch Ness Monster. They'll immediately jump to the Loch Ness Monster. I'm like, no. I'm not talking about that.
We're not talking about that.
Yeah.
And it's one thing if you simply, I understand why people disagree. I thought this was absolutely ridiculous. I couldn't believe I was watching television programs and reading books and seeing articles and interviews and papers and documentaries by scientists, all saying that this could be real. I couldn't believe this was going on.
Right.
And so, and I still thought it was ridiculous. I thought at every step of the way, I was just so interested in it. Self-employed guy, I had plenty of time. So I was just interested. I thought for sure at some point I'm going to stumble across some reasonable explanations, like, I don't know, people being intoxicated by swamp gas or some sort of
right.
gas or whatever.
A phenomenon, yeah.
Yes, some kind of explanation for why people were describing things that I thought certainly could not exist. There's no way. I've been an outdoorsman my whole life.
Yeah.
And so many of my friends are outdoorsmen and hunters and hikers, and I just could not understand. There's no way.
There's no way. Yeah.
There's just no way. But as I say, the more you look into this, if you are an intelligent person and you will crack a book, you're not going to be able to just walk out in the forest and find a Sasquatch. I mean, you need to learn what's already been learned.
Correct.
And then understand, okay, well, if there was something like this, how could you possibly explain it? Well, that's when you start studying about the apes, and you start studying about the habitat and the rainfall and the correlations between these regions in North America and the same kind of regions in other places of the world. So, when when I heard it, I thought it just sounded ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. But the more you look into it, the more compelling it is, and the more I was astonished at how much evidence there was, and how, though circumstantial, all of it incongruent was just, it was almost obvious. You know, it was almost obvious that, well, okay, maybe they don't exist, but good God, everything in the world points to the fact that they do. Let's not argue that, you know?
Yeah.
That was plain to see. So anyone who, you know, any smart person who really did the research and looked into this would have to conclude that, yes, it is absolutely possible, and, you know, on paper so far, likely, even though I don't believe in it. I'm still a holdout, but you're right. I looked at all the evidence you looked at. You know, any intelligent, reasonable person would have to agree. Everything points to them being there.
Right. So, you want to see one?
I'll tell you, man. I used to think I did.
You want to?
These days, of course, I would, but boy, man, it would have to be just.
What? 100?
I don't want it near my cabin.
100 yards, maybe.
Man, let's make it. No, hell, it can be 50 feet as long as it's on the side of a highway far away from my home. You know, and I'm driving by.
Right.
Yeah, it can be as close as it wants to be. I would love to have a close-up view, but no, sir, I don't want to. I live in a cabin deep in the woods.
Yeah.
And
you don't want them there. Yeah.
No.
You don't want them there at your domicile. No, of course
every person, these people that eyewitnesses whose stories are just so compelling when they describe the shock and the paralyzing fear and shock. And it is such a commonly emphasized theme in so many eyewitnesses telling their stories as they recount, you know, what they saw, what they experienced, at just absolute fear that they say, and I've heard it said so many times, that they thought they knew what fear was. They've been in combat. They've been in some heavy-duty situations with dangerous working environments and whatever. All law enforcement, all kinds of dangerous environments, and they say that they did not know what real fear was until they had a Sasquatch encounter, Sasquatch sighting.
Yeah.
And over the years, at first I was just so, wow, of course I would love to see one. Wow, I used to think I'd jump out of my truck and just go running after one in the woods to get a closer look. That's how I thought about it. You know, but no, as you learn more and more and more and hear more and more and more, that is compelling, and that does jive and correlate with all the other compelling stuff you've heard and read and seen or whatever. Yeah.
I don't know, man. A lot of people do say that. You're right. They say, man, I've even heard people, man, I thought I was ready to see one until I did.
Yeah.
And now I don't ever want to see one again. So
yeah, and hear it from me. I mean, I consider myself absolutely Bigfoot crazy, for lack of a better word, because I am so immersed in this mystery, and I don't want to see one up close. Certainly not near my cabin.
Well, yeah,
where I live. Because of what people describe.
Of course.
Fear, but why they're so damn afraid. You know, a hairy giant looking in my cabin. Geez, let's stop talking about it, because I got shirts hanging up in front of my windows right now, just because, hey, if Sasquatches are going to attack my cabin, I don't want to find out about it by just glancing at the window in the middle of the freaking night. I will have a heart attack. I'd have a heart attack if I looked out and saw two giant glowing red eyes just peering in 9 feet off the ground. I'd fall over, man.
Well,
I got every gun under the sun right next to me, and I'd probably fall over from a damn heart attack. Seriously.
well, dude, just
So no, I don't want to see one.
just give them,
Sure.
God, what is it for the mosquitoes? You know what I'm talking about.
Give them the garlic like Janice
Yes,
Carcoy or whatever
give-
his damn name was.
Yeah, give them the garlic.
I'm not taking anything. For the record, I'm not taking anything away from that. Hey, nutty as it sounds.
Just give them garlic for the mosquitoes.
Give them garlic for the mosquitoes. Hey. But yeah, man, from Native American legends to the legends of similar creatures in other parts of the world that have persisted for as many thousands of years, like the Yeti in the Himalayas, the Yeren in China, the Orang Pendek in Sumatra, and of course the Ibu Gogo or Orang Pendek, which in the Indonesian chain of islands, which of course the Homo floresiensis, the Hobbit fossils, kind of proved that legend right there.
Well,
and I was surprised you didn't hear more self-proclaimed cryptozoologists, triumphing that, trumpeting that.
Right.
Hey, here's a cryptid legend all these years of a small ape-man species, and hey, holy crap, we found their bones. They really existed.
Well, what do you think it will take to prove Sasquatch?
You and I both know, bro. You and I both know.
Only a body, huh?
I think a body or a significant hunk of one, a whole damn arm with an elbow joint and a hand on it, you know what? Leg, a knee joint down to a foot, and you better have more than one hunk of body that you're going to throw up as evidence in front of TV cameras. You better have a few more samples of convincing Sasquatch body parts safely stowed away at secret locations. Should you be fortunate enough to,
that whole regiment, that whole like you got to have like multiple outs kind of thing with that for sure.
You have to have multiple little sense of redundancy there just to make sure, because if this phenomenon, incredible people that claim experiences, is to be believed, then so too is to be believed that there is likely every effort, when it can be made, for certain people and certain government agencies to show up and do whatever they can, no matter what the public may have seen on site. Eventually, and fortunately, they don't have to jump every Tuesday. This doesn't happen all the time. So, but you're right. I think it's going to take a body or a significant hunk of one, man. It's just nothing else will do.
I'm starting to think a little differently. Okay, as far as getting science more involved, I think that I'm starting to think that if you took good video of one, that would get science much more on board than it is today.
No, you do. You make a great point. If, for example, the drone technology combined with thermal cameras consistently in different places, could confirm, so to speak, okay, well, we are picking up something, and hell, it's 9 feet tall, 4 feet wide, and all these different people are getting it. And you're right. It would be so compelling and conclusive of at least one something or another, right, that it would almost demand more scientific interest and funded scientific interest.
And in thinking that, I kind of thought to myself, I was like, wow, you know what? If the Patterson film would have been just 30% better, I think that would have been enough for scientists right then and there. And forget today also, I mean, as well, but right then and there to to give it more validity, like credibility, like there's something here. This is something we can't ignore.
You're right. I mean, the film is unfortunately what it is, and but the people that were on site to investigate the tracks left by that film subject, I mean, those tracks were cast.
Sure.
Those tracks were deeper than deeper than anything that they could make in the mud. Deeper than Bob Gimlin's his horse's individual hoof prints. That was certainly documented, but we didn't have the technology of media then the way we do now, and that type of information wasn't spread along with the more sensational aspects of the PG film, which is just, of course, the film itself and seeing a clip, and that was all people pretty much walked away with and said, it's just somebody in a costume. So
yeah,
but you're right. If it had just been a little bit better, if this, if that, and I think that, like you say, I mean, conclusive film evidence, like say from drones with thermal, and of course maybe just really great high definition footage that can be examined and determined to not have been CGI created, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And multiple people, of course, over time, if you've got multiple folks coming up with results like that, then you're going to be
yeah, sure, that helps too, absolutely. But I was even just saying, just one video, like think of it as a new Patterson, because CGI is so easy to rule out. I mean, you can easily detect CGI in anything. You know that, right. Ernie is an artist and a guy knows that shit.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, and also the public now is so used to CGI. The public in general has become aware of what it looks like. You know what I mean? It's not like when it first came out really good, like in Jurassic Park, and people really thought they were looking at a T-Rex, but now it's like, that's a fake T-Rex,
And, yeah, back to the Patterson Gimlin film. For the record, while I could go on, you and I could talk for a whole day about it.
Sure, and we will, yeah.
About all of the compelling aspects of that go largely completely undiscussed, unreported, never even mentioned when a news story or something wants to mention it in current, present day. All the interesting facts about that film that most folks don't know. But having said that, as a true skeptic, an open-minded skeptic who is fascinated by this phenomenon, who has researched and studied it to the nth degree. Are you there, bud?
Yeah, I'm here. I am.
Sounded like maybe Minnie had crawled up in your lap there for a second.
No.
I'm sorry. Help get me back to my train of thought there.
Patterson Gimlin.
Patterson Gimlin film. If you really are trying to sort of make the case for Sasquatch as an advocate and present your theory, you don't need to include the Patterson Gimlin film. You don't need to include anything that is inconclusive.
Sure.
And it ultimately, while it's very compelling, I just want to make that point because so many Bigfooters kneecap themselves. Maybe the Patterson Gimlin film is of a real Sasquatch, but it is not and should not be the cornerstone of your argument. And so many Bigfooters they want it to be real. And again, maybe it is real, but they want it so bad they put it forth like it's the best evidence there is. And that's
right.
Not needed, it's not necessary, and it actually sets back the advocate's argument a great deal. It should simply not be included. Hey, there are lots of known hoaxes, known hoaxers over the years. The legend far predates the phenomenon of sightings, far predates any known hoaxes, by thousands of years with Native American culture. So it's like I say, there's just so many fascinating aspects to this, but hoaxing is not ever going to explain 9 feet tall, 4 feet wide, estimated 800 pounds, leaving impressions in the ground that no one can duplicate.
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
There's so many more compelling, real things. Hey, look at the hair, man. Hair samples. That are all wild tapered hair, that are primate for sure, but they lack a central medulla, I think it's called, or a central cortex. So they're kind of hollow, kind of clear on the inside, which suggests, I don't know, kind of maybe a hollow hair, kind of a theory sort of a thing. But without the follicle, without the tiny chunk of tissue in a follicle, you're not going to get DNA out of them. But these have all been confirmed from in North America. And then you've got trackways, that can't be duplicated, with stride lengths of 5 to 6 feet, with weight impressions indicative of 600, 800 pounds, over terrain sometimes followed for miles, and 17, 18, 19 inches long.
Yeah.
8 inches wide, 8 inches wide at the ball of the foot, 4 to 5 wide at the heel. The proportions of these tracks are consistent proportionally. Not to mention, even if someone was knowledgeable of the phenomenon enough if every hoaxer out there that wanted to plant fake tracks was knowledgeable enough of the phenomenon to have researched the proportions of the tracks, they still could not have produced the trackways that are found.
Oh, you just put them on backwards, run downhill.
So, these things defy explanation by any other way, any other means. And so I don't believe Bigfoot exists, but I'm highly inclined to think they probably do. I have very good reason to think that this species of rarely occurring, highly reclusive, highly intelligent ape is real. I think that they really do exist. But again, I don't believe it. If somehow tomorrow science came out and said, hey, there appears to be this phenomenon that we're now finding out that there seems to be some weird genetic recall or some genetic hallucination of something from our ancient past, and for some reason, people who spend a lot of time in or near remote forested areas, they hallucinate seeing Sasquatches. Well, if any other theory comes out like that, I'm all ears.
Yeah.
Because it's still amazing to think, how could something like this still be here or be here at all without us having absolute proof of it by now.
Yeah. And what you just said makes a lot less sense to me than than the idea of a undiscovered upright walking ape. I mean,
once you look at all of it and read all of it and hear all of it and consider all of it and see all the correlations, you start to think, wow, it's more unbelievable that, and now I'm quoting Jeff Meldrum again, I think he put it this way, he said, it's more hard to believe that a series of spurious hoaxes around the country, could explain this phenomenon. That becomes more ridiculous than to just say, no, it's got to be a species of highly reclusive ape.
I agree. It's like it's like the 9/11 conspiracy. It's like, well, which makes more sense? 18 guys with box cutters taking over airplanes and flying them into structures, or this great grand conspiracy involving thermite and blah, 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 blah. I'm a retard. Yeah, I mean, it's Occam's razor,
Yeah, and to be fair, that doesn't necessarily mean that the simplest explanation is usually the right one. It simply means that you don't need to add extra variables in order to make your theory or a line of dots connect. You know what I mean? You go with what you have, And usually, yeah, that's going to lead you in the right direction. And this every single facet of this phenomenon points to them actually being there.
Yeah.
And I think that any smart person who was shown all of the evidence, as I've been shown, as I've found, as I've uncovered, could only conclude that yes, they are likely there. And any person, like say a person like Benjamin Radford, let's just say a person like Benjamin Radford of the Skeptical Inquirer, any person like Benjamin Radford who did look at all the evidence, which he hasn't incidentally, who did look at all the evidence and still said that it could not exist, is just dumb.
Right.
Seriously. No, seriously. There's no way that a smart person could look at all of the evidence and then conclude absolutely no, they cannot exist. They're not there.
I agree.
So there's all, and I can prove the dumbness simply by what people like Benjamin Radford of the Skeptical Inquirer say, who are skeptics, and the arguments that they give for why Bigfoot could not exist. And the credible eyewitness facet of this phenomenon issue, the credible eyewitness issue, they cannot address. They do, they address it, but they're completely wrong. They've completely misapplied their own logic. And I frankly can't believe that they will publicly say these things. They say that, as you know, they explain eyewitness accounts of Bigfoot as animal misidentification. They believe that people see bears or moose or this or that, and even though that person has seen 300 bears in their life, or they've seen 20 bears in their life,
or one
or one bear,
yeah,
or a whole bunch of bears on TV and in print, in books, in school. People like Benjamin Radford, and this includes Benjamin Radford himself, say that these people are simply misidentifying some other type of natural phenomenon or another species of animal. Because they've been primed. They're aware of the Bigfoot legends, and here they are in the woods, and they see something big and hairy, and they think it's Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Now,
that's close-minded.
Go ahead. Oh, that's only the surface of their argument. They explain, in order to cite a precedent to back up their argument, they cite that in the justice system, it is known that people their memories can be faulty. For example, a person is mugged on the street, and then later several suspects are lined up. That person is able to go behind the glass and try to identify them. They can, it's been proven, they can misidentify the person that mugged them. They can misidentify the person that attacked them, the person that robbed the store. It's possible. However, conversely, it's worth noting that even though that's kind of like arguing about a lie detector test, yes, it's can be compelling one way or another, even though it's inconclusive and not admissible. So the point is, these skeptics will say that, well, we know that people can misidentify, get their attacker wrong. So we know that eyewitness testimony is fallible, and therefore that just completely explains, why this animal misidentification happens. Even though people in the damn justice system do not misidentify the species of the mugger, they don't misidentify the species of the bank robber. For God's sakes, why would this guy who has seen 50 bears see his 51st bear and then suddenly think that it's a Sasquatch? It's just absolutely ridiculous to say that because, especially under a moment of shock, let's say, when a person's getting mugged, you know, that their memory can be a little foggy as to who exactly it was when faced with a lineup of 4 similar suspects. Well, that's a misidentification of people. You know, the person on the street who was mugged, she knows the difference between a person and a bear and a damn fairy. You know? She didn't report any of that. She reported a person. Yeah. Okay, so she got the person wrong. That does not translate to a person in the forest who sees a moose or a bear or whatever, and who has seen those animals plenty of times before, but then now all of a sudden thinks they saw a Bigfoot.
Yeah, it almost translates into them picking a bear in that criminal lineup you were talking about.
Skeptic argument that I have read. I have read this in the books of scientists who are skeptics and say Bigfoot could not exist.
Oh,
and in each of these books, they address all the different facets of the Bigfoot phenomenon and claims and this and that and the other. The one thing that in every single damn one of them, including Benjamin Radford of the Skeptical Inquirer, this is the argument they all shared, that they all put forward, the same argument. Now, remember what I said about there's no way that an intelligent person could look at all of the evidence and if they still think that Bigfoot could not exist, they are dumb. They're dumb. And if you want something to not be or to be, before you ever look into it, you want to be right a certain way because, there's just no way, blah, blah, blah. Well, you're just going to defend, even with the worst, most misapplied logic, the most foolish, argument that you could make.
Well, that's
the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And I sure would like more people to be aware of the Bigfooters, particularly to be more aware of how stupid the opposition is.
Well, that's truly closed-minded. They're not open to the idea of, they're not open to the, are willing to explore new ideas. That's the definition of closed-minded.
Yeah, but my problem is, okay, they can still not believe, but give me another damn reason. Are you that dumb? You're going to say that because people misidentify folks in the legal system occasionally. No,
again, that's closed-minded.
Or all the time or every day. It doesn't matter. It's got nothing to do with a guy who sees a moose and then sees a grizzly bear and thinks it's a Sasquatch. That's ridiculous. That doesn't disprove. That's not an analogy that fits.
No, yeah.
Period.
Yeah. No, so people like that are just closed-minded, dude. And I mean,
exactly.
we
want it to be a certain way.
We encounter that every day in our lives. Things that matter in our human lives.
Well, which is why I talk about it with folks like you. If I bring this, I'll broach the subject. I'll bring up Bigfoot, in front of someone that I haven't discussed it with before, and usually, there's no takers, and so I let it go. I don't.
No, I'm not even talking about Bigfoot. I'm not even talking about Bigfoot. I'm just talking about like people stuff. Like, hey, free economics, closed-minded. Tax reform, closed-minded. Right. I mean, like, yeah, dude, like ideological, closed-minded. No, bad. I mean, people will be closed-minded about things in our world, our human world that matter to us. Right.
Right.
Should guns be legal? No, guns are bad. I'm closed-minded. Yeah, so I mean, that's going to translate into the Sasquatch realm for sure, because people like Benjamin Radford are just going to dismiss it wholeheartedly, closed-mindedly, no matter what, until they see one in their face.
Yeah, well, he, as you know, he would not know. Well, he is at the top of the list. He's at the top of my "I told you so, you dumbass" list of people that I will be calling should I be lucky enough to have that day in my lifetime. And again, you asked me if I want to see one. Man, I want to see one on television in the back of a truck,
dead,
4 different networks already on scene, and a couple of guys in white lab coats already, scalpels and bags and shit. I want to see all of that. I don't care where it happens. I don't care how it happens. And for all of the no-kill out there, that's fine. If you want it to be proven, then, and you're no-kill, at least understand this. I'm not saying that I'm pro-kill, and neither is Pat. For example, we were just talking about the possibility of, confirming the existence of this species with just conclusive enough thermal imaging, high-definition video, and trace evidence left behind where they walk, et cetera, repeatable over time. So, but back to a specimen. Should one be killed, only one will ever have to be killed, if that is not just killed, brought in, proven.
Sure.
With a plan. Somehow, that goes with the argument I'm making here. But only one creature would have to be sacrificed, so to speak. That's it. There are so many people trying to prove this creature now. Who would gladly do it? They're out there trying to prove it with a bullet, and they can't do it. So if Bigfoot is proven tomorrow, all over the news tomorrow, conclusion, we got it. There's a specimen in the truck. Bam, done. Mystery over. I argue that you could put 50% more hunters in the woods, all with bad intentions, and it would immediately, just by proving it, it would be restricted. No, you can't go to the woods and hunt these things. If you were found to be doing that, but it wouldn't matter. You can't catch them today anyway. I don't think 2,000 more hunters per square mile are going to be able to catch them.
No. Well, that goes back to what I said earlier. If we as a species, 6 billion plus, decided to eliminate them from the face of the earth, you damn right we could do it.
Yeah, but we're not going to, and we're not going to allow that. It just wouldn't be allowed. And you really can't get that many people illegally in the fucking woods, and you excuse my language, and you can't get all that many people, especially if they're black market hunters being flown in from around the world to go get the big trophy for their Belgian beer baron boss, that wants a big stuffed Sasquatch now that they've been proven to exist, and he wants it in his great.
I agree.
That's other wild game. I get it, but it's just not going to happen. There'd be such an immediate crackdown, bro, with all of the wildlife agencies.
I agree. I agree. I agree.
It's not a concern. It would not. It's not going to be a concern. Of course, there will be people that try that, but no, it would be so hard. That's not something people would need to be concerned about. One specimen, and that would be it. That would be it. It wouldn't matter how many people would would want to go gunning for them. It's not going to happen.
I hear you. That's a topic for another show.
Right. No, you're right. But we got on the topic of what to prove it.
I've got my opinion. I have my opinions on that, and it gets very political. And I definitely don't want to get into that now. But
no, I'm just going to say that for my own selfish reasons, if anybody's wondering where I stand, I just truly am so fascinated by this phenomenon. I want to see it proven. And that's another thing. Skeptics will say that Bigfooters love the mystery, and they don't really want it to be solved because they want to just keep living this life of mystery and searching for something that's not there. No. That's not it at all. I want to see somebody to peep in on us right now and go, dude, go to Fox News, go see it. I want to hear it right now. I want to see it right now. I'm fascinated by it. But selfishly, I would like to see one on the news. I'd like it just proven absolutely sledgehammer blow, all done.
I agree.
The science and the lab work will pan out. They'll get busy on it right away. But by God, we've seen it. It's over. We know it. Holy cow! Look at that sucker laying in the truck. That's what. I want that. Or even if it is proven with the thermal imaging, high definition, trace evidence, repeatable, etc., then finally just proven to exist and made public. I'd jump up and down for that too. But I want to see it. I want to see it happen.
Agreed.
I don't want them to persist. You know.
So before we go here, just wrap up, Ernie. You know, what is the primate objective all about, and what are future plans for what's going to be going on with us and other people?
Well, I think I would like the primate's objective to be able to inform people of the more comprehensive nature of all of this, and a lot of the facets that aren't discussed. Like I say, just really point to it, and that would I think are far more compelling than trying to show blurry video or blurry, photos.
Sure.
And just stories alone.
Yeah, that's getting old.
I'd like to be able to say again.
That's getting old. Blob squatches.
Yeah, absolutely. I would just like for people to be more aware of all the stuff that is so interesting and compelling and corroborating and correlating, and why it seems so likely that, they in fact do exist. And isn't this the most fascinating thing in the world? Because, we have been to the moon. So how could Bigfoot exist? We've been to the moon. Well, that's why it's going to be a bigger damn discovery than having landed on the moon, because we did land on the damn moon and we didn't even know they were here. So it's going to be huge to discover, if we discover that there are in fact 9-foot tall giant apes living in the forest. My God, who doesn't want to see that? Terrifying or joyful? Who wouldn't want to witness that incredible discovery? I mean, it'd be mind blowing. Absolutely mind blowing. So in addition to that, I think the primate objective, you and I will continue our research, and with the furtherance of technology and what you and I had planned, which we don't have to discuss at the moment. I live in, and you, of course, are very familiar with, and we research in what would be called a Bigfoot hotspot.
Yeah. So, we're
Appalachians, and so that's what we hope to. I hope we continue to do our research and see what we can turn up. And this area that's rife with a long history of activity.
Yeah, and I'm just going to say now, we are in Northeast Georgia, and anybody that wants to talk to us, or if you've had an encounter or whatever, hit us up. Absolutely. At primateobjective@gmail.com. So
primateobjective.com, folks. And that would be great, because again, the eyewitness facet of all of this is very fascinating and compelling, and I think it's some of the best evidence. And we hear from Dave Picara that a lot of people, apparently, they just don't want to report. They don't want to reach out to any type of Bigfoot community in this region, in the southern Appalachians. For some reason, that seems to be kind of common. People are just less likely to come forward, even if it's been something their family's been familiar with for generations. So we would very much encourage people in the southeast, in the Appalachian region. We would love to be able to talk to folks who have had sightings or encounters, confidentially, however they wish.
Yeah, primate at gmail.com. primateobjective@gmail.com. Yeah.
That's primate objective.
At
it's a bit of a tongue twister. Try saying that 5 times fast. At gmail.com. Folks.
Yeah, there you go. All right, so let's wrap it up, man. Final words.
Final words. Well, I would say you can't know it all unless you study it all. And once you've studied it all, you'll be absolutely as fascinated as we are. So,
okay.
If you're interested in it, keep looking into it. Keep looking at it. I challenge anyone to keep looking into this phenomenon, all relatable aspects of it, and tell me that it's not compelling. How about you? Parting shot?
You're going to hate the intro music that I put to these videos.
I was going to ask if you had outro music or if you had any little
Nothing.
ending context there. Okay, good.
Nothing.
Right.
No. I mean, you know, at this point we could start talking about chicks, whatever. You know, maybe people find it interesting. I don't know. But probably not. So yeah, no, we'll doctor it up, we'll fancy it up. This is just a sort of a test run. I'd labeled it episode 1. I'll keep it just because, but
I'm glad we were able to just kind of talk about a lot of different things, a lot of aspects.
Yeah,
briefly, just touched on a lot of comprehensive stuff here.
Yeah, comprehensive. I can't wait to get into the you know, individual kind of like, you know, focus topics. You know, like we were talking like in the very beginning, man, talking about Rio and his video, and you know, just whatever's going on in the, you know, Sasquatch world. You know,
absolutely. Oh, I look forward to it too, man. I'm raring to go.
All right. Well, hey, we can do one whenever you want.
All right. Well, folks, hope this has been entertaining and informative, and we hope to be doing a whole series of these. So stay tuned and check us out.
All right, guys. Good night. Thanks for watching.
Squatch Talk. We needed to mention this has been Squatch Talk.
Squatch Talk
with
Pat and Ernie on Prime Ape Objective. All right. Good night, guys.
All right. Good night.